Welcome to The Right Height, a blueprint for cultural impact. My name is Gavon, and I'm a strategist who's spent years connecting vision with execution. I've seen firsthand how the right insight can transform careers and companies. And this podcast dives into how cultural impact is built, how hype is sustained, and how emerging creatives can build long-term impact. If you're serious about leveling up as a creative or professional, grab a pen and paper or your notes app and get ready, because what you're about to listen to could be the key to unlocking your full potential. Before I get started, if this podcast brings you any bit of value in any way, shape, or form, the best way to support this podcast is to download this episode. Downloads directly impact the podcast's reach and helps get these conversations to more people who need them most. It takes 2 seconds and it'll make a big difference. Thank you. All right, let's get into it. So I like to also give context to the reason why I started this podcast. It isn't always that I get to meet inspiring people, but when I do, the conversations are the best part. So just taking it from the top, like, what have you been up to? Like, in the most open-ended question.
Yeah, just been really working quite a bit. It's been a busy summer on the work side. Started a new role about 3 months ago, so just getting in. You know how it is, start a new job, getting in the groove, and finding your new routine and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, just and then trying to enjoy New York summer, as much as I can. But yeah, just been head down for a lot of the summer, which has been great for kind of what I need right now.
That's real. It sounds like you're doing all the right things. And, I remember we met actually just through LinkedIn as you were making your transition to New York. So it's honestly like this is kind of like a time capsule moment of just like looking back at the last 3 months and sort of what you're excited to do going forward.
Totally. On that note too, yeah, it's something. I've had roles where like maybe it takes me a few months to learn and kind of get everything. I've had roles where it takes longer. And a piece of advice I got years ago that I've kind of always held close to me is like, if for the first 6 months of your new role, it doesn't feel like you're in a boat with a hole in it and it's sinking and you're just chucking water out to stay afloat, then you didn't challenge yourself enough. So that's something, even in like those moments of like stress or like, a lot on your plate or working through those things, is like, that's exactly when you start a new role or with a new company or whatever, that's a good thing, because if not, then in a few months you'll realize you didn't challenge yourself, hard enough with that position.
Yeah, that's a good way to like look at it. Uh, so instead of like me reading off a list of your accomplishments, how would you introduce yourself in 60 seconds?
Yeah. So I'm Chad Howell. I'm from Michigan. Grew up right outside of Detroit, Southeast Michigan. Been in marketing my whole career. Grew up in an entrepreneur household. My parents ran a family business. That rubbed off on me in college. I started a business and kind of just went from there. Got my first marketing role out of school. And I've always had just this like kind of hustle, entrepreneurial spirit that has carried me throughout my career. And of course, resulted in like side project after side project, even well in full-time roles. So working now primarily in the sports realm within marketing. I've done quite a bit of work in the music marketing space, and most of my career prior to all that was in the consumer brand side. So kind of an all around consumer facing marketer. I like to use the term jack of all trades humbly in that kind of realm. So currently I work for a company called Translation. We're an agency based in Brooklyn, also offices in LA and San Francisco. Steve Stout is the founder, started the company in '04. Steve Stout has been very prevalent in pop culture over the years, and started the agency working on some really, really cool things. So the company started, like, one of the first big projects was McDonald's Ba Da Ba Ba Ba, I'm Loving It. That was us. So that's like super cool to learn some of the, pedigree and history. Historically, I've been in like strategy positions. I currently am a context planner. I work in our context planning department, which is essentially, I like to say, is like the cousin to strategy. We work pretty hand in hand with strategy, is kind of just through a different lens. We're a little more, lean a little further into the cultural insight side of things. We do a lot of the choreography of the campaign. So like the world building aspects, how is this going to show up? Who's it going to show up through or with? And really, how does that all come to life? So it's a great role for someone like myself that it touches a lot of different things. We work really closely with the creative department, the strategy department, and are kind of like involved in every step of a campaign or a project. But in like shorthands, if I have 30 seconds to explain to someone what I do, I usually just say I'm a brand strategist or a marketing strategist. And that keeps it simple, depending on how in the weeds someone is with, the agency world.
I usually tell people that like a strategist, like I tell people a variation of things. Like a strategist helps you get from point A to point B. A strategist can help you define your audience, it can help you define your voice. Like it's sort of the goal is to be a jack of all trades to your earlier point.
Yeah, and it's interesting, I'll say context planning, and sometimes people hear content planning and they think I plan things on the social side, or folks that are more familiar with like comms planning kind of put it in that bucket as well. But yeah, it is interesting. It's like a discipline and a department that is pretty unique to translation. And it's something that a lot of our clients enjoy and it's kind of a differentiator in a sense. So yeah, it's really cool to be a part of like important team within the agency.
Was there a moment when you realized like the light bulb went off and you said, "Oh, I'm really good at this"?
Definitely. It's something like throughout my career, working mostly on the brand side prior to this was, I'm sure like most of us, we've had careers where maybe we felt we weren't as valued or like underemployed might be a bad term, but like, where we feel like we're capable of doing more than what our current role or position, calls for. And so during one of my last roles, I created an Instagram page and a TikTok page where I started breaking down marketing happening in pop culture, in music, sports, entertainment, things that brands were doing, just things really I found interesting and wanted to talk about, partly just out of curiosity and interest, and then also like as a kind of portfolio builder in that same realm. And I will say that's kind of when I started to realize I might actually decent at this is when I'm not much into the vanity numbers or things of that sorts, but I had a few videos that caught like a few 100,000 views and had a flood of DMs in my inbox of folks trying to work with me on projects and whatnot. And I just kind of realized like other people value what I'm bringing to the table and what I have to say, and they're from all pockets of the U.S. and some people internationally that I've found through social or found me through social. So really kind of once I started to put my presence out there in a social media setting, and the reception being great, that's when kind of the light bulb went off.
I feel like as a strategist, you sort of have to also be able to promote your work in a way that, like, to your point, like resonates with the audience, whether it's a client or is a follower on social media. Like it kind of goes both ways.
hmm
What if you had a strategy starter pack? What would be in your starter pack?
Yeah, so my starter kit would definitely include a pen and paper, a laptop, of course. Then within that, Reddit is something I really like to use when kind of going into research on like a topic or a category, industry, whatever. To really, Reddit is a great place for like the really in the weeds, kind of on the ground, unfiltered community thoughts. Pinterest as well. I'm a big Pinterest board head, and that's a great spot to just like collect my thoughts visually. Twitter in the same sense as Reddit, and I'm not using the term X. I will probably use Twitter forever. So both of those, and then a library card. I'm heavy on like diving into slow forms of media, both in for work and outside of work, but really like diving into a topic and finding a book or two on it, watching a pod, kind of just really understanding as much as I can. Um, so yeah, I think that would be my starter kit right there.
There is something that you brought up that I wanted to dive into, which was like slow form content, like slow sort of like consumption. I feel like just working in marketing, we are held to the standard that we know what's new, we know what's next, we should be able to predict.
It's so fascinating because like there is this kind of inherent pressure to just like know what's going on and know what's happening and who's doing what. And so that can feel overwhelming sometimes, and it can feel like chronically online. And there's definitely like just you got to kind of draw your line in the sand in a way and determine like what that right mix is for you. For me, I'll give you an example. One of the brands I work on at Translation is the NBA, and I've been a basketball head my whole life. So very familiar with like the game of basketball and what happens like in and around the NBA. And you have like NBA Twitter, for example, which moves at the speed of light, essentially. And there's always discussion and chatter, and whatever's happening in NBA Twitter is happening very fast. But I've been very intentional about like keeping like one eye on that and then keeping another eye on like what like basketball documentaries can I watch that give me some more color to like the history of maybe this like pocket, or what books are out there that I can read. And I think one thing kind of big picture is, things move so fast that sometimes things move too fast for us to even determine like, is there really weight or value in this like idea as a trend or something of that sorts. And I think like media, print media, whether you read it online or actual physical form, does a great job of kind of centering like what's really happening, like what is really a trend. I think sometimes things move so fast that the rate at which like traditional media and slower forms of media move, sometimes that can be like the best barometer of like how relevant or how important something actually is versus like just another social trend that's going to be gone in a month or two.
One of the latest trends, a little boo boo craze, and it's one of those things where you have brands like Kava actually went through and like created their own.
I've been someone that, as many of us, like Labubus, that's not really for me. It's not really my thing. But of course I'm privy to everything happening because it's hard to kind of ignore, right, as the volume of that as a trend became a thing. And I actually, when I saw the Kava little plush babies come out, I thought it was really cool. I thought it was interesting too. I was reading into it a little bit more, and it's something they have been working on for a while. Like even they started working on that before the Labubu trend became a thing. So now it's kind of, that's one of those instances where like they, maybe we couldn't have predicted the Labubu craze to be as big as it is, but they must have seen or heard something and kind of like looked ahead and thought there would be something there. And it seems like it's just kind of not coincidental, but like perfect timing for them. Who knows how successful that will be? I know they just kind of announced that last week, but I thought it was interesting when I found out that like, oh, this is actually something they've been working on for a little while. And it's not something they threw together just like last month when Labubus were, everyone's doing Labubu meetups and that sort of thing. So, really interesting.
Okay, so I want to pivot to a this or that game real quick. I think you are the best person to answer some of these questions that I have myself. And I'll introduce two topics or ideas. You're gonna pick one and then give me a quick reason why you chose them. So first one is freelance versus full time.
Oof, this is a tough one because, I've done both. I will say it depends. It's a cop out answer, but right now I'll say full time. I think there's something, you know, benefits, right? 401k, all that sort of great stuff that comes with a full time job. But I think the reason I say that now is because I'm in a position of my career to where like it's what's good for me right now to be in a place where I can learn and absorb and be around people that are way more senior and experienced and smarter than I am versus freelance days, which have been great for me. I've enjoyed my time freelancing, but there's some sort of like chronic hustle that comes with that, and the nature of like always having to be aware of the workload, the money when it's coming, when it's not, and then, kind of just always, you're always selling in a way, always looking for that next project, and it can eat up a lot of weekends and evenings and, more time than you would like. But I think it all depends, comes down to like what stage of your career you're in. I think the moments I have freelanced, it's been the right time for me. And the moments I've been full time, it's been the right time. So right now, full time, if you asked me like 6 months ago, I would have said freelance, no question.
A follow up to that is if someone who's going full time to freelance, how should they prepare for that transition?
Yeah, I would definitely say reaching out to your network and just understanding your network and growing that network, right? And understanding where opportunities are, where gaps are, and kind of reading the tea leaves and looking out into the distance to see like where your value can come if you do decide to make that jump. That's one. And I think also just knowing like if you're in the right career headspace to be doing so or not. And like if you're prepared. Like there's been moments where, I've kind of embarked on different journeys that maybe I wasn't fully prepared for that I thought I was. So I think it's important to understand your value, what you bring, and like the level of which you bring it at to know, like, is this the right time, or do I still have some work to do around the edges with what is my like outreach plan going to look like? What is like, how am I going to sustain this? What's that clip of outreach got to look like? How am I going to go about it? What type of work do I want to be doing?
I got you. All right. Second one is, would you rather work agency or in-house?
Agency. I've,
Agency.
I've done both now. I think depending on the type of person you are, like I'm someone that likes to have my hands in a few different buckets, or I've been in scenarios where like working with in-house with one brand can be monotonous depending on like what type of individual you are. And I like the variety that comes with the agency side, and the pace of the work as well, where there's closer deadlines, tighter turnarounds, a faster pace versus sometimes on brand side, there's, longer runways.
Cool. Last one, Instagram versus TikTok.
Instagram 10 times out of 10. I got no beef with TikTok. I think it's interesting watching the platforms evolve and change. Not saying Instagram's even the best platform, but TikTok it's gotten to a place where like, maybe a year and a half ago or so, or 2 years ago, like people were really using TikTok as a search engine and finding things like what to do this weekend and, where to eat and this sort of stuff. And nowadays it feels like when you use TikTok as a search engine, it just pulls up like TikTok shop results, right? And I think the interesting thing about Instagram is like everyone uses Instagram, right? Like the CEO to your 14-year-old cousin, right? Like there's a big variety of folks on Instagram. I think TikTok's a great place to like turn your brain off and, just consume. Um, Versus Instagram can, be a little more professional or a little more like uh the eyes are there and that sort of stuff.
I didn't ask you this one, but like where LinkedIn falls in this like ecosystem of tools for creators and professionals.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like many folks probably, I have kind of a love-hate with LinkedIn. And I think one thing that kind of turns me off right now is it feels like there's a lot of AI slop on LinkedIn. Like a lot of posts you see, folks just had Chat GPT writes, and you can tell. But I think the interesting thing about Instagram for me, how I view it, is, LinkedIn historically has always been a very professional, stuffy sort of internet space. But all of the folks that use LinkedIn also use Instagram for the most part, right? Like that 45-year-old VP of that company you want to work for is at 10 p.m. in bed scrolling on Instagram, not LinkedIn, right? So I think there's something to be mindful of there, that like a lot of these people that maybe you want to reach on LinkedIn, they're also active on Instagram, and that's sometimes can feel more casual to get connected on that space versus LinkedIn. And it's you're able to paint a little bit of a further picture than just your work self, right? And your headshot and your resume and like what you see on LinkedIn on Instagram. So yeah, there's definitely still value in LinkedIn, and like I still check it. I'm still, seeing what's going on. But just personally for me, I still prefer Instagram in that setting.
I'm curious, what are your thoughts on culture right now, and also what excites you?
Yeah. And there's a couple of things that I think about a lot. One being like echo chambers. I think there's a lot of echo chambers that are existing now more so than ever, where we're over analyzing everything as a society. Every move that, especially in like the marketing sense, right? Like every move that a brand makes is being watched and then discussed and analyzed, and then the analysis is being analyzed, and we're like recapping the recaps. And it's gotten to this space where it's like it's just this echo chamber that's been created, to where everyone wants to share their opinion, which I think is how social started in the first place, right? Like that's not a horrible thing. But then when like all we're seeing, like I'm a big fan of the Clips album that came out and the rollout they did, but it was just very interesting to see like hundreds of like rollout breakdowns from Clips, and like it's just we got into this space where like sometimes we just need to appreciate things for what they are and enjoy them. And there's always value for analysis, but when the analysis sometimes outweighs the actual enjoyment of said thing, there's a disconnect for me. And then another is the clip farming side of social media, which is something that's been really interesting to watch emerge. And what I mean by like the clipping economy, right? Like we all see like the bite-sized clips of podcasts or interviews or whatever the case may be. I think the result of like the TikTokification of the internet, right, where these long form formats are promoting themselves with clips, but now you have, you know, these dedicated accounts that are just posting clip after clip after clip from any random podcast or interview or whatever, just for the sake of like trying to go viral. And when you dive deeper into it, it's really fascinating because like you can find like a page that like a clip page that you click on their profile and they're sharing clips from all different types of media. And it's not like they're like a music page or a comedy page or this. It's like everyone's just trying to these pages are trying to like hit these, you know, marks. And I think the ramifications of it are something we're yet to see, where like podcasts, for example, I operate a lot in the sports space, so I'm going to use that as an example. You know, we see like there's all these basketball podcasts of former players, and clips of these podcasts go viral all the time. Pair them with like highlights if it's like a story of like Kobe Bryant story from, you know, 2004 or whatever, and they'll show highlights. And it's interesting how the rate at which the clip economy has grown to where I think it's actually going to start shaping narratives. It is shaping narratives, but then shaping like legacies for some of these athletes, even. The clipping economy is something very interesting and something I'm watching, and the ramifications of it we're going to just start seeing soon. Now, there's a tool called WAP.com or WAP something. It's something that Drake and Party Next Door used when they were promoting their album, where like they put out a project on WAP and all these TikTokers just started clipping up their music videos and this sort of stuff and putting them out. And that's why like when they dropped that project, it was kind of flooding timelines. So it's really interesting to see people start to use that. And it's a whole rabbit hole in itself.
And speaking of the echo chamber, so I was hesitant to speak on like the American Eagle, Sydney Sweeney, because it had been heavily analyzed and like commented on, and it's
Right. Right. And that's a great example of like, you know, like obviously like I think we all had pretty similar reaction to like to that. And that's why the discourse was so strong. And it's definitely like important to like call out brands or people or whatever when like things like that arise. But I think there is like yeah, like a double edge to it to where like sometimes like when everyone has an opinion and it's all very similar, it almost feels like people are just trying to get their punch off real quick. So like either they can save their face or like they can be a part of it or just like they can you know like what I'm getting at to where like
yeah.
it's an interesting like two sides to it, to where like how much do we really need, and it's a space that like I operate in as well, like you know my social pages where I do breakdowns and I'm a part of that ecosystem as well. So I'm of the same vein of like if I don't have something unique or like a unique POV to bring to this, I usually will just kind of let it pass through. Um yeah, that was a crazy kind of the past 2 weeks has just been like all American Eagle dialogue.
Yeah. And now they're like dragging Levi's into it. The Levi and Beyonce 4-part sort of documentary series is way more artistic and unique than again than a recycled ad that Calvin Klein did. It's like they're not let's not compare, you know, apples to oranges. At the crux of all of this is like people are capitalizing on, I'm gonna say something really controversial and it's gonna run
Hmm.
because what I have to say is probably really unpopular.
Right. And like by doing this, I'm almost guaranteeing that I'm gonna get my brand so much more earned media than I wouldn't if we did something par to the course. And that's like the most interesting thing we've seen like just kind of happen recently to where like now brands are factoring in those echo chambers and like the commentary around it, right? Like for example, another example, during the WNBA All-Star weekend, Gatorade put out a spot that said "Let her cook," and they used like Glorilla's Let Her Cook, like in the spot. And it was great. I thought it was really great. But I didn't really even have the foresight to realize then like a whole certain pocket of people would view that as Let Her Cook, women's sports. We know how the dialogue can be around women's sports, and like there was a lot of chatter after that from a certain subgroup of people that were like, yeah, we should let her cook rather than let her play on the basketball court. And so it's crazy to even like say that out loud, but just to paint the picture of like, I'm not going to sit here and say Gatorade did that on purpose, but it definitely was like a controversial enough line to where they knew certain groups in like the sports fan ecosystem would take that and make it even larger and in turn get them more reach.
I didn't even make that connection, but it's interesting because it's exposing the reality, the mindsets that we as marketers have to speak to.
Totally. It's like you got to kind of factor in, you know, like people on the coasts or people in these industries or pockets. It's folks in middle America, and it's folks in, you know, other smaller places that aren't talked about as much that may have way different opinions, or way different views and a way different lens that they see things through.
I have a fun question just to like close us out. If you could have dinner with three people, dead or alive, who would they be?
Malcolm Gladwell would be one for sure. Shaquille O'Neal, interestingly, I think he's got a very interesting athlete side of things, but then like his business ventures and acumen, and that would just be a hilarious chat. And then definitely an artist as well, Jay Dilla. I know you spoke on a previous episode with Phil regarding the Jay Dilla watch. So if anyone watched that episode, they know all about his impact. I think just the creativity of Jay Dilla, someone to just reinvent an entire category of music, and it takes a lot of innovation and ingenuity. So I think that'd be my three.
Who would be your dream collaborator out of the three?
My dream collab would be with Shaq. Do some sort of business venture with Shaq because he's got the money to put up and the track record for and it would just be a blast.
I believe he's like is he a creative director for Reebok?
Yeah, he's I think like a president or a vice president. It's actually really interesting because you know he had a deal with Reebok back when he was playing, and he like him and Allen Iverson were the ones that made Reebok basketball a thing, and they were the number 2 sneaker behind Nike in basketball. And for the past 15 years, they've had no presence, like no basketball shoes, no nothing. And so yeah, they brought him back in to revive it, and it's really interesting seeing like what they're doing. Like they have Angel Reese, and they've been putting out like the Angel Reese signature sneaker. Angel Reese's logo is like one of the best like sports logos I've ever seen. It's like an A and an R in cursive, and then the R connects for a halo like on top for Angel. Super fly, super fly. So it'll be cool to see like what him and Allen Iverson, someone else who's had so much impact on culture at large, can do to like resurrect Reebok in the basketball world.
What are your thoughts on like sports collabs right now?
Sports are so embedded in American culture, no matter how you slice it. And especially like sports, live sports is what's keeping like linear TV still a thing. So like, I think the staying power of there's always going to be eyeballs on sports. There's always going to be money in sports, and there's always going to be room for brands to get involved. I do think like with some collabs, like we see like these ebbs and flows of like, we're going to be seeing so much soccer collabs within the next year because the World Cup coming up. And we've already started to see that infiltrate, but it's like soccer collabs, unless you're like a big soccer head, it hasn't really been heavy in like the sports universe, but we're gonna be seeing that a lot. But I think it's interesting just seeing like the new players like getting into the game. Pop-Tarts in college football is like one of the craziest like algorithm takeovers every year. If anyone's seen when they do their bowl game and they have the Pop-Tart mascots and they like sacrifice the Pop-Tart mascot. And it's like, are you familiar? So they have a bowl game where like the winner, they have to get like a Pop-Tart trophy, and then they have these Pop-Tart mascots running around all game, and the winning team then like chooses what Pop-Tart to eat basically. So they throw the mascot in a giant toaster, and then out comes an actual like giant Pop-Tart that the team eats to celebrate. And it's gone like massively viral every single time, like not just on social, but on TV, on media, on like newspaper. Like everyone talks about it when it comes up, and it's like, why is Pop-Tart like in college football a thing, right? So I think it's interesting to think about like these brands that are getting involved in sports. But I do find enjoyment in like the tasteful sports collaborations. It's been cool to see a new wave of like very thoughtfully art directed sports partnerships. And just like bringing some of that even like high fashion appeal and marketing to the sports space has been interesting. Of course, like parlaying that with like the tunnel fit checks, a runway now for everything across like basketball and football at any sport when they're walking into the arena.
Well, I'm sure we will probably jump on another episode closer to maybe the World Cup or another sports universal moment to unpack with you later. So, thank you again for coming on the podcast. Looking forward to seeing the work that you have coming out soon.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me. Great chat.